Hello and welcome back to Motherhood Interrupted. I'm your host, Kimberly Levy. Today I'm joined by a very special guest. Her name is Dr. Andrea Niles. Andrea is a clinical psychologist specializing in maternal mental health with a PhD from UCLA. She founded Prospera, which is a company that has a mission to reduce all barriers to mothers accessing high-quality mental health support. She also is a mother of two and a wife, just a complete boss, and I am thrilled to have a discussion with her today all about what it's really like to tackle postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and a number of other mental health issues that come up for mothers. So I'm super excited to have her here with us today and enjoy listening to her. Please reach out to her if you feel that you or anyone you know could benefit from her services. Her company truly is unique and offers not just therapies remotely, but also practical and tactical tools to help you get through whatever struggles you may be experiencing. And enjoy the episode. Dr. Andrea Niles, thank you so much for joining me here at Motherhood Interrupted. Thank you for coming. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, so for the audience, Dr. Andrea Niles is a brilliant woman, and I'm going to have her dive into her background in just a moment, but she found me and we just chit-chatted, and I'm really excited to talk about mental health issues, specifically around anxiety and depression for mothers, which is a huge just thing that happens in motherhood that I think is one of the most unexpected kind of things that we all struggle with. So yes, thank you so much for joining us and bringing this very important mental health topic to light and forward to the audience. Would you mind describing a little bit about your background for everyone?
Sure. Yeah. I am a clinical psychologist. So I've been studying treatments for anxiety and depression basically my entire career. I founded Prospera about a little bit over a year ago. So it's a mental health platform specifically for moms to support moms in their mental health through the motherhood journey. So we support moms in pregnancy and postpartum. And our mission is to remove all barriers to moms accessing mental health support. So things like cost, availability, location, all kinds of things that kind of keep moms from accessing mental health support. We're trying to solve all of that. And so, Prospera provides weekly one-on-one sessions with perinatal certified mental health coaches. And then we have a digital tools library. It has dozens of tools that are specifically designed to support moms' mental health. And so through our program, you get to work with your coach. You access our tools. We have lots of actionable strategies for postpartum anxiety and depression, postpartum rage, and we can talk more, a lot more about the details. But that's kind of the overview.
Wow, I love that. So basically, your business that you just created is really just for the woman that needs some kind of therapy plus coaching. So really getting actionable about what to do depending on what their struggles are. Can you give us some examples as to how a coach might assign you a homework or a task? How does that, I feel like the thing that's most striking about your business to me, besides the niche, which is so important, is that you don't just go through therapy, but there's action behind it. What can you maybe illustrate some examples of what a session would look like, and maybe some coaching that helps people or women that go through sessions with your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I hear pretty often, it really frustrates me, is that people go to therapy and they say, I talked with somebody, which was nice, but I never felt like I really got any help or any actual solutions for my anxiety or for my depression. And that tells me that therapist is not really doing their job to the fullest. And so what we do is we provide that place to be able to just talk and get support. But on top of that, we have tools. We're basically giving you activities to practice between sessions that are tailored, personalized to you, depending on your goals and the challenges that you're facing. And these things are backed by science. I am a scientist by training. And so they are based on the, best evidence that we have for things that help reduce things like anxiety and depression. So for example, if you are really struggling with a lot of postpartum anxiety, most commonly we see moms worrying about the health and well-being of the baby, checking the baby through the night to make sure baby's breathing, worrying about, going out of the house, getting sick, those kinds of things. So what we would do first is try to understand what are the thoughts, the things that are going through your mind when you're feeling anxious. So we understand some of those thinking patterns, we call those thinking traps. And then from there, we practice what's called reframing. So basically encouraging you to look for evidence for and against your thinking patterns to try to basically change or get yourself out of some of those thinking traps. And so that's been shown to be very effective for reducing anxiety. Another example is if you're someone who's avoiding going out of the house because you feel like I can't handle this is too much, it's overwhelming. So what we would do is we'd have you approach that. Just take a walk around the block. Let's give you a baby in the stroller and let's just go for a walk around the block. And then from there, you kind of build up, and then maybe we're going to the local store. And then from there, maybe we're actually going, to the grocery store or Target run. So working our way up through activities that we've been avoiding.
I love that. I feel like this is just such a hot topic, and it's kind of talked about, but I feel like when you're in it, when you have a new baby, you're so deep in it that I don't even know how these women ask for help. I think you almost don't even have time to address this in some ways, but I think through your business, making it so accessible and, really helping women identify and pinpoint those thoughts and just voicing them to someone, just because you're almost like, when you first have a baby, whether it's your first or your third or your fourth or whatever, you're in survival mode and you're so beyond exhausted. And for someone to come in and just kind of support you through those thoughts and then give you little actions like taking a walk, which, it's just so much work to get out of your house. Let's be honest, whether you're in some kind of anxiety state or not, it's anxiety inducing for anybody to have to, get all this stuff together in the car seat. And there's so much to that. But I love that you really take therapy to the next level and really, really make things actionable. And to me, that's something that isn't just fluff. So I think that's a huge differentiator in your business. And I wanted to ask you, what are kind of the most common, if you could boil it down to the top 3 themes or kind of states of mind that women struggle with? Can you highlight a couple of the most common struggles that women have postpartum, or even, like you said, in pregnancy that you assist with or that you see so often?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's a lot of awareness around postpartum depression. So I think there's been, major kind of public health campaigns, so people sort of have that in their mind. Okay, I'm looking for postpartum depression. But there are a lot of challenges around postpartum that women don't actually know about that are actually more common. For example, postpartum anxiety is quite a bit more common than postpartum depression. There are other things like intrusive thoughts, incredibly common, incredibly distressing for a lot of moms. Postpartum rage or anger, challenges around identity. And then, so there are lots of different things that can come up in postpartum. So to your question about kind of what's the most common thing we see is postpartum anxiety. And so I hear a lot from moms saying, well, I don't really feel depressed, but I feel miserable. I don't feel like myself. I'm not present with my baby. I'm worried all the time. And so that's one of the main things that I would say we help with. Another very common one is intrusive thoughts. And so more than 70% of moms have intrusive thoughts postpartum. And intrusive thoughts are they're horrible thoughts or images that just pop into your mind of something terrible happening to your baby. It could be an accident happening. It could also be you as a mom doing something to your baby, either by accident or even on purpose. And you have these thoughts that come into your mind about that. And a lot of moms go, what is that? Like, am I going crazy? Is it something wrong with me? I'm a terrible mom for having these thoughts. So that's another thing that we support moms around. And then the third most common, I would say, probably is the postpartum depression, which is the one you hear more about. And that's kind of low motivation, trouble getting out of bed, thoughts of like, I'm not doing a good job, I'm a bad mom. And so I would say those are the main things that we support.
It's interesting that you say that, because one of my girlfriends talked to me, just her kids are now like 3 and 5 or something. And she just now told me that she really struggles with postpartum anxiety. And I really didn't know exactly what that was. I mean, I know about anxiety. I feel like as a mom of 3, I live with a certain, maybe healthy, maybe not, level of anxiety, adrenaline. I'm not really sure what to call it, but the kids keep me on my toes. But can you maybe share what exactly is postpartum anxiety? Is it just those intrusive thoughts, or what else? Like, what other kinds of symptoms? Like, maybe I even had it and didn't even know what that really was. Can you explain it a little bit further?
Yeah, there's a few different kind of varieties of anxiety, I would say. But the most common one that we see around postpartum is this sort of constant worry about the health and well-being of the baby. So worrying about things like SIDS, worrying about breastfeeding, getting enough calories, worried about whether something's going to happen to the baby, about leaving the baby with somebody else. We have a lot of moms who have trouble, giving baby over to someone else and being able to take a break and do things for themselves. So it's that sort of constant worry about something sort of catastrophic happening. So that's probably the most common thing that we see. And then there's other kinds of forms of anxiety. So another form is panic attacks. So you have this sudden, abrupt rush of intense fear or discomfort or dread. It just comes on all of a sudden. And then oftentimes those panic attacks will come along with this fear of having another panic attack. So you're sort of always on edge or on high alert for another panic attack. There's another kind of anxiety, which is social anxiety. And so for moms, I often see this as like fear of being judged by other people. So if you go to the store and you're worried that, your child is going to start crying and then everybody's going to be looking at you and everybody's going to be judging you, and God, this mom doesn't have it together. So that's kind of a social anxiety. And then we have the intrusive thoughts kind of anxiety, that you have this thought come into your mind and then that really terrifies you. Why am I having this thought? What's wrong with me? Am I going crazy? Am I going to get postpartum psychosis? So anxiety can come in lots of different kinds of forms. And so, yeah, but if you're noticing that you're constantly feeling anxious, on edge, worrying, and you're not present, then that might be a sign that there's something going on there from an anxiety standpoint.
Got it. It's so interesting because I feel like I've experienced all of those things, but I don't know that the severity is like enough to classify it as that. But I almost feel like every woman experiences some degree of it, but it sounds like obviously this is a more heightened kind of version of it. So how much of postpartum anxiety, depression, all these different things that you kind of manage, how much of that would you say is attributed to hormones? Like, what role do hormones play, if any, in all of this? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, this is a really good question. And a question that has been looked at in scientific research, to try to understand to what extent are hormones sort of the cause of this. And I would say that there's some evidence that for certain women, there's more sensitivity to that fluctuation in hormones. So when you're postpartum, you have this really major shift in the hormones, right? And so for some women, there's greater sensitivity to that shift than others. And so for a subset of women, it could be that the hormone and the sort of reactions to the hormones are the cause of some of these symptoms. But I actually think that there's more evidence that, not only are your hormones shifting, but your entire life has been turned upside down, right? You have this baby, your sleep is completely disrupted, you're out of your routine, you're physically healing from however your birth went about. And so you have many, many different environmental factors that are going to contribute to your mental health. And so hormones is one piece of it, but I think people often sort of attribute everything to hormones, which for me is not as encouraging because there isn't that much you can do about the hormones. It just kind of happens. But there's a lot you can do to kind of help your environment or change your environment or change how you think about things or change how you do things. And so there are a lot of things that you can do that are sort of hormones aside that can help with these symptoms.
Got it. That's interesting. Yeah. And, I feel like to me, it makes perfect sense now, especially that I've been through this multiple times, is like nothing really prepares you for motherhood. And I mean this in a way that, like, here's one thing that I think just does not, nobody really tells you this, but I feel like this is a big thing. So I'm in a fairly egalitarian marriage in the sense that my husband and I both contribute equally in terms of our careers. And the thought coming into kind of with that dynamic, the thought with our first baby was we're going to both contribute equally. And I know how badly so many men want to be able to give and contribute and support and nurture the baby and their wife. But what I think one of the things I was the least prepared for that I don't think people talk about because I think they maybe think it sounds bad or something. But the reality is that when you give birth, and this was so shocking to me, when you give birth, the baby wants the mom. And the reason for that is because they know the vision's not great. The baby is basically smelling the mom, hearing the mom's vibration of her voice, her heartbeat, all these kinds of things that they're used to having in terms of, physical, emotional support. You're basically the mom is home and the dad just cannot contribute, not to mention, sorry, not that the dad cannot contribute at all. I'll just finish that thought. The dad cannot contribute equally, like biologically speaking, right? And not to mention, if you're nursing, there's all of that, those dynamics coming into play. So there's just a lot of I feel like almost like nature, like nurture versus nature, like nature wise, the mom is home to the baby for, several months at least, right? The fourth trimester, all those concepts. But I just feel like it puts so much pressure on the mom in a way that for me blindsided me, as I kind of continued my journey with motherhood, I started to be able to expect it, but the man just cannot contribute equally, just biologically speaking. And I'm not saying this to disparage men whatsoever. I just feel like it becomes this huge burden on a woman that really they were not prepared for, or at least I'm speaking for myself, and I've spoken to other women. And to me, that is one of the biggest sources of anxiety because all of a sudden you become the main event after you just went through 9 or 10 months of pregnancy. Everyone's pregnancies are different, then you're healing and now you're the one that's on. And it is a lot of pressure on one person. And I don't know why we don't openly kind of speak about that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting observation and pretty, I would say pretty aligned with my own experience as well. Coming from a partnership where it was like, okay, we're gonna split it 50-50. And I didn't anticipate how hard that actually was going to be. So I was nursing, so that basically makes it impossible for dad to get up in the night because you have to express milk one way or the other, and then I feel like there's some sort of biological pieces that mom is more tuned in to baby for whatever reason than dad is. And so even if my partner was going to get up with the baby instead of me, like I would be up. There was no way I was not going to wake up. So and that wasn't the other way around. If he didn't have to get up, he could sleep through it. And so yeah, I similarly wasn't totally prepared for how much I really was going to be the one doing a lot of different pieces. And so for my partner and I, it did take some discussion and negotiation around like what it was going to look like for him to be able to do more and take more of the tasks, and what did it really look like for us to try to get to 50-50. And this is something that I hear a lot from the women on our platform as well. And, whether you're trying for 50-50 or, you're doing, 100% and you actually just need them to take 5%. A lot of women struggle with that conversation with the partner. How do you ask for help? And women feel guilty. He's working all day. He comes home. He's exhausted. I don't want to ask him. I feel like I should be able to be doing all of this. But the reality is that you're going to be burned out if you do 100%. Your partner has to do some help, and it's okay to ask. And sometimes we have to ask over and over again. The partner doesn't really get it the first time, or they don't really internalize it, or they don't sort of get into a habit. So you might have to ask again and again and again to try to get your partner sort of into that habit and into the routine of like what it's going to look like to share some of this responsibility.
Yes. Oh, I love that you talked about that. I feel like women take on so much and they are so terrible at asking for help. And part of that is feeling like, well, he can't do it. He doesn't know what to do. And this kind of bleeds into a conversation that we had on the podcast a couple of weeks back around, communicating with your partner and, how important that really is to a marriage. And for me, I'm used to kind of taking care of things on my own, being very independent. And I think a lot of women are like this, where they don't really know how to ask for help. I love that your business helps coach women through that process. But like, for example, my sister, she is, very independent, very successful doctor, alpha female, all these things, right? And for her, I had to say, look, being a mom is going to bring you to your knees in terms of really getting you to understand that it's truly not for one person to do. And for me also, I initially could not ask for help from my mother-in-law, from anybody, because I just felt like it's my job. I can do it. But then I couldn't do it all. And I think that's where having kind of this like mom tribe and all that stuff is so important as well, because instead of women appearing as if they're perfect and have it all together, there's real support and importance and value in having female friends that you can be like, I am really struggling, or this is so tough, or being able to just text a friend about it. And I would encourage women out there to find women that they feel comfortable with, whether it's through a mommy and me or, something, when, especially in those super early days, but kind of in general. And, my one thing I'd say is like, it's okay to be perfectly imperfect. It's okay to be like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I'm so exhausted. Or, say something about your husband. And it's like, women have to really lean on each other, because it's like this unique experience that only moms can truly understand. And I guess, what are your sentiments around community or the importance of leaning on other moms?
Yeah, I would say a pretty strong theme that I see among moms who are having a really hard time is being alone, doing it alone, not having help. So one of the things that we would definitely encourage moms around is trying to make social connections. Yeah, find a mom group in their area. There's a great app called Peanut. I'm not affiliated with it in any way, but the Peanut app allows you to connect with moms in your area. It's kind of like a dating app for moms. And then the other piece of like, there's that sort of community and having people to talk to and get support from, but then there's also having sort of instrumental help. And so not being afraid to ask, family for help. Ask your partner for help, looking for a nanny or some kind of childcare situation where you can have a little bit of a break, even if it's just part-time. And that's that's one piece where I think anxiety gets in the way, right? This sort of anxiety about, well, they're not going to take care of the child right, or they're not going to do it the way that I would do it. Or if I'm not there, my child's going to have some kind of long-term attachment issues. But the reality is that if you don't get a break, if you are completely burned out, then, you're going to get to the point where you're yelling at your child, or you're not able to engage, or they're doing too much screen time because you're just burned out. And so being able to have a break gives you a little bit more energy and a little bit more life for those moments when you are with your child and caring for your child. So I definitely am very much pro, getting help, as much help as you can possibly get on board in terms of taking some of that off your own plate.
I agree completely. I think the kids are super nimble. And here's an example. I just put baby London. She's 18, almost 19 months. We just put her in preschool, and or like little daycare, whatever you'd call that. And, just to get her socialized and out of the house. And she, in the first 2 weeks, was crying quite a bit. But I knew that she would adjust quickly and that it's better for her. And I didn't have guilt at all, because I know enough now. But getting your child in the hands of other capable, support people is so important. Even if you're a stay-at-home mom, if you can't afford to even just like twice a week, 3 hours a day, for example, at first, at whatever age, suits your family's needs, right? Like my first two, we did it later, 2.5 and 3 years old. But I just think that mom guilt, like, we need to dispel it and really push ourselves to just trust that these are people with experience, and your child is very flexible. And like with Charlotte, I was traveling a lot. I was not there 4 to 5 days a week for, a year and a half, let's say. I was there on the weekends predominantly. She has no memory. I'm going on record. She has no memory of this whatsoever. She is like, we're little best friends. She's now 6. And so, your child is very adaptable. And I agree that the anxiety really gets women to stop dead in their tracks, whether it's just going to a mommy and me. It's, it's anxiety inducing because you're in your worst state, and like, you're used to being like, put together and happy. And when you're at your point, especially really close to being postpartum, you're like a mess. It's like you just went through a war. I mean, you physically are like living in this state of like barely surviving. But I would really encourage women out there I love that app idea. That's so, God, how amazing these women come up with these ideas. But yes, find a mommy group, because I will say there is nothing more comforting than looking at other moms that have also slept only, 3 hours maximum that night, and their boobs are leaking and they have no makeup on, and they don't even remember the last time they took a shower. And, before they had this baby, they were always prim and proper and perfectly polished. And just to see other women, like, it's so validating. It's so important to recognize that it's all part of the journey, and like, it gets better quickly. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And that, I think that's 100% true, that like, if you are just doing it by yourself, I think a lot of women sort of feel alone. They're like, am I the only one who's suffering from this anxiety? Am I the only one who feels this way, or who has these horrible intrusive thoughts, or who, doesn't want to get up and take care of my baby? And it's like, no, there's so many other women out there. I talk to them every single day. I promise. There's a lot of them. And so just having a little bit of that normalization around some of those thoughts and feelings, I think, is so important, because I think what happens is, like, you have some of these thoughts of like, why am I not enjoying this that much? Or, I'm not doing a good job as a mom. And then you have this added layer of like, I shouldn't be thinking that way, or I shouldn't be feeling that way. And I must be a terrible mom for having those thoughts. And so that added layer is really the problematic layer. It's not really the first layer. Like, having thoughts about not wanting to take care of your kids today is like totally fine, totally normal. But when you have the added layer, that adds the guilt and the shame and the anxiety. And so that's where, seeing other people and hearing other people having that same experience, like, okay, like this is okay. This is normal. I can just keep going. And tomorrow, hopefully I'll feel a little better.
For sure. By the way, I still have those thoughts every day that I don't want to take care of my kids. I'm just putting it
Yeah,
out
me
there
too.
to the universe, just letting everyone know. No shame in my game. I love my kids more than anything. I'm just letting you all know though. But yes, I think that idea of self-judgment, women are so hard on themselves. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how hard we are on ourselves. I always say we get paid in reverse, that we get our diamonds up front, when you're getting married and things, and then we put in the hard work later. And it makes no sense to me whatsoever. Yes. So I also, there's something else that I wanted to talk to you about. You are a highly, highly educated person and, incredibly hardworking, a mom of 2 young kids. Your kids are 2 and 5. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you just started a business, which we were saying earlier is like essentially your third baby.
Yeah.
So you're a very accomplished woman. You're a mom. You are an entrepreneur. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about your experience, kind of, if you don't mind sharing, what led you to start your own company, what your experience was prior to this.
Sure. Yeah. So I was in the field of academia, which means I was doing scientific research, and I was studying treatments for anxiety and depression, also women's health. So I was sort of adding to the scientific literature, which has, incredible value and has its place. But I felt like what I was doing wasn't getting these treatments that we know work into the hands of the people who need them. And so I left academia and I joined the world of digital mental health, which is relatively new, but there's lots and lots of sort of app-based things now for mental health. So I joined a company. We were working on an app, and it was a company led and founded by men. It was an app specifically for anxiety and depression. And so I came in as sort of the expert on anxiety and depression treatments. And for 3 years I was there, and I was able to do a lot of great things, but I really struggled getting my voice heard. I felt constantly like my expertise wasn't respected, and it was so frustrating. Like I had so many ideas, so much stuff I wanted to do there, and I felt like I couldn't. And this is, and now I've heard this from a lot of women in this field as well, sort of in these high-powered positions, but for whatever reason, they run up against these roadblocks where they just can't get their voice heard. So I never wanted to be a CEO. I never wanted to start a company. I really didn't. But when I left there, I felt like I had to, because I felt like if I was just going to join another company, working alongside, male executives, it was going to be the same problem. I never really was going to be fully in control and have the power to do what I wanted to do. And so I said, I have to do this. I have to found this company, and then founded Prospera, and really sort of found this niche with moms, which of course resonates in a personal way. So that's how I got there.
Wow. So a lot of what you're saying, I feel like, is a very important thing to discuss, which is being a high-powered woman in business in male-dominated fields. I grew up personally always feeling like I was equal to a man. And as my career progressed, I started to run up against, just different situations where I just, for whatever reason, felt similar to what you're saying. And I don't know why that is. Why do you think women's voices are not heard as equally in business? Is it we're not good at expressing ourselves? Is it boys club, like we just can't penetrate it? Like, why is it hard for women to be seen and heard and respected in business, especially kind of the higher up you go? What's your kind of intuition on that?
I hate to say this because it means that there's not really much that can be done, but I just do feel like and it's going to depend on who's in power and the type of people that are in those, executive positions working alongside you. But I just do feel like, for whatever reason, based on our gender, we're not always believed to understand things as well as men, or have that expertise. I mean, this concept of mansplaining, I think, is very much aligned with that. Like, for whatever reason, men like to explain things to you as if you don't understand it. And this actually happened to me once. Like, my PhD is in clinical psychology, specifically anxiety disorders. So I literally studied anxiety disorders for 9 years and wrote a dissertation, published over 30 papers in journals. And I had a psychiatrist say to me once, he started to explain to me some definition, I think it was panic disorder, what the definition of panic disorder was. So it's so basic. And I was like, do you not think I know that? Like, so that kind of experience says to me that there's this thing that's happening in the minds of men when they look at a woman across the table from them, and for whatever reason, they don't think they have the knowledge or expertise. They just don't give them that benefit of the doubt, which makes it really hard for them to trust that opinion or say, like, this is a brilliant idea. And so I hate to say that I think that's a big part of it, but I do think it is, unfortunately.
Okay, so let's keep going off that scenario. So where I think women need to do better, because I'm not interested in complaining. I'm interested in raising awareness and empowering women to step into their power. In that situation, having not been there myself, I bet you didn't stand up. And it's just me. This has nothing to do with you. I'm just saying, from what I know of women, the way that we're kind of raised and just the way that we're built, I can almost guarantee you didn't say, oh yeah, I actually studied that and wrote multiple papers on this, subject, and actually was very, advanced and You probably just sat there, nodded and smiled. Or did you actually assert yourself? I want to hear what happened.
I think I did. I don't remember exactly what I said. I think I said something like, I know what the diagnoses of anxiety disorders are. Let's not spend our time going over that. I think I was pretty clear in that moment that was not a necessary use of our time. Mostly I was worried about the time because we didn't have that much time and we were trying to get through, some topics.
Yeah. And in that situation.
So I did. And I think he backed off a little bit. I think he heard it. And so, okay. But I don't know what the long-term result of that interaction was.
Well,
but
I think what I'm getting at, and I'm glad you said something, but I think what I'm getting at too is, like, women are not good at fully owning our power for some reason. Like, even as we're talking about the anxiety and the self-judgment, like, we beat our own selves down and we almost make ourselves small. And I think why I've been able to be so successful is because I have learned to lean into my power, to fill the space with my power and not be afraid to offend people or make myself small. I remember when I was kind of on my path to rising in my former job, I was knocking it out of the park. Okay, I was. But I remember I would try and make myself small. And, that's really bullshit. And I want to call out bullshit, because if you're a woman, you're powerful. If you're a mom, you're powerful. And I just see women constantly making themselves small. And I think why a lot of women have anxiety and all these different mental health issues is because they're not stepping fully into their power. And the second you start owning your power, which I know a lot of this comes through maturity as well, but I'm just saying this to give words of encouragement to women. When we make ourselves small, it's not authentic to who we really are. And that contradiction creates anxiety. You're not in a flow state of who you truly are. And having a voice and saying, I actually have my PhD in this and I'm well-versed in this. I don't need a lecture from you on this. And being direct with men or with anybody. I think it's like, if we're direct, we're a bitch. And I think for me, I've been able to be very successful, especially over the last couple of years, in really using my voice and saying, I'm here because I'm an expert in these things. You're not. And that's why we make an amazing team. Right. And there's a way to use your voice in a way that is honest, confident, and not bitchy, but it's just succinct and direct. And I feel like that is something women do not do. We do not use our voice the way that we're meant to. And I think it causes a lot of feelings of like just anxiety, confusion, lack of self-confidence. So, I mean, are there any exercises women can do to really lean into their power or to like own their new identity as a mother that you work on? I don't know, any advice for a woman that's like struggling to like own their womanness, their motherhood, their, whether it's in business or in the home, using their voice, like any tools that you think women should be using and leaning on more and more?
Yeah, I totally agree with this like idea of trying to basically practice asserting yourself, practice, making your point, practice sort of disagreeing with some, what somebody is saying. And I'm thinking kind of in a business context, but I think this could be anywhere. But that was something I had to do a lot when I was working alongside this team. I didn't agree a lot with what the CEO would say. And so I would try to come up with ways to get my point across, make my point, and then afterwards I would feel so much anxiety. Am I being disliked? Am I overstepping my bounds? They're not going to like me. And so but what I would tell myself is like, this is what we call an anxiety treatment. This is an exposure. You do the thing that you're afraid of. You face your fears, and then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And if you're feeling anxious, that's good. You're supposed to be doing things that make you feel anxious, because the more you do them, the more comfortable you get with them. So I think women often use anxiety as an indication that I've done something wrong, or I said the wrong thing, or that worry of like, what did I say? I shouldn't have said that. And then they sort of back off. But like, you want to sit with that discomfort, let it be there. It's okay to feel it, and then do it again. And so you sort of keep practicing, and you get more and more comfortable with sort of asserting yourself, like you're saying, stepping into your power, doing something that doesn't feel comfortable and easy for you.
Yes. And I think that a good way to practice this too, and this is even when you're a stay-at-home mom as well, is whether it's in the context of your friendships or your, like we're talking about with your spouse, which I know so many women, sit there stewing with their spouse and don't use their voice, but even just practicing being honest with your friends about how you're feeling is like, it's one way to just use your voice, even if it's not directed at anyone outside of yourself. Just that practice of owning how you feel and being unapologetic about it. Like, it's okay. You feel like, pardon my French, feel like shit after you just gave birth and you haven't slept in, I don't know, months. I mean, come on. Like, I just feel like having honest, raw, real conversations is so important. And it's the way you really deepen your connections and fill those voids in your life in terms of like feeling isolated, being a mom, a new mom, especially, but a mom when your kids are like 0 through 3, I say you're like totally, it's like such a lonely path because your child is not out in the world yet. And you're not really connecting with other parents quite yet. As soon as your kids are in school and activities, all of a sudden your social circle explodes again. But, the first 3-4 years can be very lonely and isolating, and understandably so. But I just feel like women need to, I know we're in the Instagram world and all that stuff, but I will say this, I get complimented all the time. And I don't understand why. It shocks me every single time, but I have been told I loved how authentic you were. I love how honest you are. I love how real you are. And I'm like, well, what is everyone else doing? Pretending? I don't get it. I just think we need to just be open and honest and stop apologizing for yourself. Actually, that's very Rachel Hollis, right? Girl, stop apologizing. Isn't that a book of hers or something?
Yeah.
I just think that if you can really be honest with people, whether it's your husband, whether it's your friends, whether it's your boss, people actually start to get to know you more and respect you more because they feel like they have an honest, real connection and a real visibility into who you are. And that's relatable, even if they don't agree with you or understand it fully. So I want to encourage women to stop. You can't move into that if you're judging yourself and you're getting stuck in your own thoughts of like, pushing yourself down. It's like you're self-deprecating, like, I shouldn't be feeling this way and I shouldn't be doing this. Yes, you should. If you feel that way, there's a reason. And I think we need to stop suppressing that. And I think the suppression causes a lot of depression and anxiety. Instead, why don't you practice voicing it and connecting with other people that might be able to validate and empathize with what you're going through? That's what you're really missing. That's just I'm not a PhD in psychology, but it's just something I observe.
Yep. And that's right on. I mean, that's really consistent with what we know about mental health, is that expression is good, being open is good, feeling what you're feeling is good, trying to suppress and get rid of it and tell yourself, don't feel that way. None of that really works very well and can make things worse.
Well, you said that way more succinctly, but okay, thank
you. You set me up for it. That was a perfect intro.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, this has been super insightful. Can you please explain to everybody where they can find you if they're interested in getting more tools in their toolkit, support, community? Where can people find your business and reach out to you?
Yes, absolutely. So if you are looking for support, one of the things that we always want to make sure we do is have openings. So you can get in literally today. If you wanted to have a phone consult, you go to our website. It's prosperamhw.com, and that's stands for Prospera Mental Health and Wellness. So prosperamhw.com. You'll see a button there, book a phone consult. You just click that, and then you can make an appointment. We'd have a free phone consult, and then from there you can learn more about our program and what we offer. We're available across the United States. We are very, very affordable. Our lowest cost plan is about $39 per session. So the most affordable kind of mental health support you could probably find aside from groups.
Wow. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Andrea Niles, everybody. You are a genius. And seriously, I'm super impressed with your idea of this business and helping so many women out there that desperately need these services. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that is it for today. Now, as you know, some of our best conversations actually happen after the show. So I want you to find me on Instagram at Kimberly Lovey and let me know your thoughts about today's show. You can screenshot this episode and let us know what your biggest takeaway was and tag me at Kimberly Lovey and we can share it on our stories. I will see you again, same time, same place next week.